Hello everybody, Cody McIntyre here from Boss Poses 3D, and today we're going to be having a little bit of fun. So today I'm going to be teaching you guys a few things. We're going to be learning about how to make some Halloween inspired jewelry. So I got these potion bottles and I figured it'd be a really cool idea because I see a lot of people on my channel ask how do you make a tube shape. So what I figured would be even a bit step further would be to show you guys how to make a cup with any design on it that you guys choose. So you could just make a cup and you can find an image on the internet and etch that on as a stencil. So I'm going to be showing you how to do stencils today. In the second tutorial, what I'm going to be doing is show you how to take any image from the internet and make that basically a 3D object with inside Blender that you can add a picture frame around, print it out, and you can hang it up on your wall. They work really good for lithographs as well. So what you can do is put a light behind it, and when the light's turned on, and it'll show you all the detail through the picture, which is always a lot of fun. You can Google, there's websites you can do that for free. But just for today, we're going to be doing the two tutorials there. We're going to be doing the Halloween decoration, and then what we're also going to be doing is the picture frame thing, also Halloween inspired. So if you guys like today's video, please do like and subscribe. There'll be plenty more coming, and let us go get started.
Alright everybody, let's get started making some potion bottles. So let's go, make sure you guys download some images of your choosing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a stencil, but anyway, the first thing we're going to do is add a cube. I'm actually just going to scale this up so it's more of a rectangle bottle shape. I am going to make this one square shape just so we can get some nice clean images on it. But anyway, the next thing we're going to do is go into edit mode. We're going to go into this last button right here up next to edit mode called the face select button. We're going to select the top of the cube. We're going to hit delete and then delete face. That way we're with a hollow box with the bottom still on it. The next thing we're going to do is come into the middle box up at the top called the edge selection mode. We're going to select all edges by clicking on one, hold control and click on the others until they're all lit up. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is let go and press EZ. We're going to drag this up about there. That seems about right. We're going to let go. We're going to press S and we're going to drag the mouse in. Okay. Now I'm just going to scale this up so I can get some better view on it. We're going to press E and Z again to bring this up. So I'm going to make this the neck. So it's going to be about that high. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is press E and Z again, about like that far. And then I'm going to press S and scale this out. That way we get this cool little lip on the edge of the bottle. Maybe I can go even a little bit further than that, something like this. Okay, so now that we got our bottle shape, we're almost pretty much good to go. The next thing I like to do is go back into object mode. We're going to select this. We're going to go in. We're going to go to solidify. Okay, now we got our solidify modifier. I bring this usually up until about 3, and you got a good little lip on the edge of it, and it is still hollow, of course. Next thing we're going to do is next thing we're going to do is hit even thickness, and then we're going to apply the solidify modifier. The next thing we're going to do is build it again. So we're going to use remesh. We're going to make sure it's a voxel, and we're just going to click this down. So I usually bring this to about 9 or 8. Might even go about 7 this time. So 7's pretty good. Okay. Now that that's done, we're going to apply this as well. Now we're pretty much good for sculpting. So now we're going to jump into sculpt mode, and this is where we're going to start creating our brushes to be able to stamp in our designs. So we could use any of these brushes, but it doesn't matter which one you choose. So the first thing you want to do is press N on your keyboard, right? And you click tool, and this is where all your brush tools are. So it's best to use the layer brush if you want to set like a certain height, but I just want to stamp our design into it in one shot. So what I'm actually going to do is just use the draw tool up at the top. I'm going to come down into texture and the brush tool. I'm going to hit new. I'm going to come down over to my properties. I'm going to come down into the texture tool there. I'm going to hit open, and I'm going to find the image that I want to use. So in this case, I got this witch thing right here. Give it a minute and it will load into your tool. Look right below it, and we're going to change the tiled down to stencil. Now that we have stencil enabled, that you're going to notice that we have an image at the side of our viewport. We can right click this and drag it. So I'm just going to get this a nice straight on view like that. We can move that around like that. We can hold shift right click to scale it up a little bit bigger. We can hold control and right click to tilt it. So just make sure you right click when you're grabbing it, or you're going to be using the corner of your screen the whole time. So the next thing you want to do is just go down in your image and just make sure you click image aspect just to make sure that's the correct size. That will rescale it to the proper resolution. Okay, so I'm just going to scale this down. I might even want this a little bit bigger. I kind of want both sides of the moon clipping. So it's going to look something like this. And just for example, I'm just going to start painting so you can see that when I start painting, I am adding the detail of the witch in there, but as you see, it's all over the place. So what I'm actually going to do is just delete all of that. Okay, what I always do is scale it or zoom out a little bit, and I scale down. And what I'm going to do is increase my radius a little bit. Actually, what I'm going to do is zoom in and do this. That way it's probably a little bit easier for you guys. I'm just going to zoom in, scale this back up. What I'm going to do is change my brush strength. I'm going to make this down a little bit. And what I always do is come up into my viewport options. And I'm going to come down into matte cap, and I'm going to change this into this purple studio light. This makes it a little bit easier to stamp in the detail. And as you see, when we go around the bottle, we are getting a really good stamp on it. And if I right click and move the stencil, you'll notice that we just imprinted our design into our bottle, and that would look really, really good printed out. So what I can actually do is just go around the bottle like this. I can even just leave my stencil. It's always best not to zoom in and out, or you're going to lose track of your scaling. So actually what I'm going to do is add another witch onto this side of the bottle. And yes, I am clicking, I'm not dragging, because I don't want to overpaint, because this is changing the height of certain parts of it, remember. So you could make it lithographic if you want with the layer tool. It's best to use that way it only paints to a certain height. But as you see, we got our witch back there as well. So what I'm actually going to do now is change the brush. So if I go over to my brush tool, I can actually delete the texture from this. I can delete the brush, click new, and I'm going to click new on the texture. I'm going to open. I'm going to choose a new texture from my desktop. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to use yet, but I think I'm going to use this wicked thing. A client wanted me to use one of these, but anyway, we're going to use the tile, and we're going to change this back to stencil like we did before. Kind of recenter our view. I'm going to scale this up. And again, we can start painting. But if you notice, with certain images, it's going to change. That's because we have so much depth on this side of the image that it's trying to calculate it, right? And that's why it's going up. So with images that have really flat surfaces and more of these flat surfaces than detail, it's always best to use different methods of placing the stencil, like the layer mode, for instance. So what I'm actually going to do is actually bring that back. I don't know where that image went, so I'm going to reopen it. But then again, we didn't have our, like I was mentioning before, our strength is really, really high. So let's just bring that down. And now if we just click around, we can almost kind of control the amount of height that we're getting in our image. Because it's the whole point to the bottle, right? If it's frosted, you kind of want it to protrude out just a little bit in certain places, but you do want it to be even. But just for tutorial sake, a lot of people have been asking how to do this. You can even go around the top and add the frame of the image if you really wanted to. I was trying to avoid that, but that's okay. You could even make it 3D. Like if I kept painting and I held it, you'll notice that it changed the depth on it quite a lot. But if I zoom out, then you will notice that we do have our witch on there. If I zoom around, we got our little angel. And do another one on the other side, and the wicked thing again. We could do any image. Just for example, like it doesn't have to be a stencil. So I'll create another one that's not a stencil. I'll open an image. I'll just find anything on my desktop. I'm not exactly sure what it could be. So we'll just use this One Piece logo as making an action figure from. So we'll go to stencil. And you'll notice that it grayscales it automatically, even being in color. So again, we're going to change our scale. We're just going to paint in the logo. just like that. And if you see that we have the One Piece logo right there, which is pretty damn cool. And another thing you can do too, if you're not happy with the amount of detail, is do the remesh. Just keep making sure that you add more detail to that. Just try to bring it down to like 5 or 6 if you want even finer detail than what we're seeing here. Or at the top, if you click the dynamic topology button, sometimes it may crash Blender, but you might get lucky. But you can also take this, drag this down as usual, say about 1.73, and then start clicking, and you'll get way finer line work. Like that. You see that's way cleaner, but this does cost a lot of performance. So I recommend just doing it the normal way and using the remesh modifier. That way it doesn't really cost you any performance at all. It's just like importing a cube, right? So it'll stay at that amount. But as you see, that is kind of how we make our bottles right here. And if you see, it is completely hollow. We could fill it up, we could drink out of it, but thank you all for tuning into that section of it. Next thing we're going to do is learn how to make some Halloween frames. So let's get started doing that. Alright, so let's start doing our photo frame. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go up into add. We're going to import an image as a plane. So make sure you have image as planes enabled in your add-on section. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to search for an image that I want to convert. So in this case, I want to use this Nightmare Before Christmas picture. So what I'm actually going to do first is just scale this up a little bit. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is actually jump into edit mode. And we need to subdivide this, okay? So I'm just going to continue subdividing all the way down. The more subdivisions, the better. You can always get a good look if you look at the lines on your drawing and then look at the subdivisions. But then again, after we're done subdividing, we then have to once again triangulate the faces. Once those are triangulated, that looks pretty good. So what I can actually do now is go back into object mode. We're going to come over into our modifiers. We're going to add a modifier called the displace. Okay, you're going to notice this changed position. Don't worry about that now. Over in the displace modifier, we're going to hit new. We're going to change this to UV. And then what we're going to do is click this little icon right here at the very end that looks like 2 pills. We're going to click that and we're going to hit open. Or we can just choose our image from right in the little tab there. So we're going to choose the Nightmare Before Christmas image. And if you notice on my screen that we got this whole bunch of mess going on, this is really simple to fix. So what I'm going to do is turn my texture on, go back into the modifiers, and right here where it says strength, I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to bring this down to about 1, and then what I'm going to do is take my scaling tool over at the side of your options there, and I'm going to drag this down. And if you notice, we got a pretty good Nightmare Before Christmas image right here. We can clean this all up. I'm going to show you how to do all that just in a moment. So we just want to make sure this is perfectly flat because we're going to be adding a panel to the back of this very shortly. But the next thing we have to do is add a cube. So I got my cube in here. I'm just going to shrink this down to about a depth I think would look pretty good as a frame. So I'm just going to scale this up to about as big, just a little bit bigger than the image. Just going to make that a little bit thinner. And what we actually want to do is copy this. So I'm going to copy the object and I'm going to paste it. So now we have one over top of the other, and I'm just going to shrink this down a bit, and I'm going to take the scaling tool and I'm going to make this stretch out. Okay. With the bool tool and all that enabled in your options, you want to hold shift, click on the other object or the other box. We're going to hold shift, control, numpad minus to remove it. And that should give us a bit of a frame around the outside of our drawing here. So now we have a bit of a picture frame that looks pretty good so far. So the next thing we actually have to do is add another cube. We're going to scale this up to be about as big as the picture frame. We're going to make this really narrow. So if I bring this up, I might be able to see it. So this is going to be the backing to our picture. We can add a solidify modifier to it if we want to thicken this, but it's still not going to be perfectly flat on the back. So I always found the best method is to take this and just get it right on the detail. Right about there. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to click that box. I'm going to click on my design, and then I'm going to hit object and then join, and now this should all be one object. Now we should have our box on the back of that. It should be perfectly flat with no protrusion sticking out of it. Now we can just layer that back down into here. Okay, Now we have our picture frame all set up for our Nightmare Before Christmas little Halloween picture here. The next thing we can actually do is start sculpting out some of the details that we have inside of this. So the next thing we actually do is jump into sculpt mode. And if you notice right away, if I start to smoothen things, so if I take down my strength, I start to smoothen details, you're going to notice we got all of these weird little lines pulling all over the place. So what I'm actually going to do is back out of that. I'm going to apply the displace. I'm going to add a modifier, and I'm going to make this a multi-resolution. Now when we start to smooth our object, you'll notice that we don't get those confuncly lines going all the place now. Now everything's starting to smooth as it should. So what you can actually do is come down into like these little details that look a bit rougher, and we can actually start to, you know, kind of smoothen it a little bit here. So as you see, we'll get the chest of the Jack Skellington. That did look a little rough, and the dress on her, we can leave it like that too if you wanted to. If you wanted to leave it, it kind of gives a bit of a lithographic vibe to it. When you're done printing it out and putting a light behind it, it actually looks pretty good. But just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just going to go through and start to smoothen it. Go along the face. If you notice that the face has a lot of misrepresented detail right there, so we're just going to go in and start smoothing this out. It's always good to do the edges as well, like around the teeth, but if you notice if we do too much smoothing, it's going to start to blend the teeth together. You can even turn up the strength a little bit if it's not enough for you. Just don't go all the way up, or you're going to run into a lot of issues. Now, the more you subdivide your plane, the better detail you're going to have. You can also do that from here as well in your multi-resolution. You can just click simple, but it seems to be going pretty well so far. And as you see, we're starting to get some really, really nice, clear image here. So what we're going to do is come along the face. Smoothen that out a bit. Just like that. There's a massive noticeable difference in doing that. And as you see, we do have a Halloween picture. All we have to do is clip this or glue it into the back of it after it's done printing. Or what you can normally do is find the highest height of the detail on your picture. So say that would be about the middle, and we can just subtract that from there, and that way you can just slide it in. You can make clips, you can go wild with this, but now you know 2 ways to make different Halloween decorations. So what I'm actually going to do is change my shading mode just to show you a few different ways of looking at it. So we got that. We got matte caps. We go shiny. As you see, that's kind of what it would look like printed out. As you see, all the detail comes through. That looks really good. And you can do this with just about any image on the internet, so don't be scared to go wild with it. So you can even make this a tube as a texture roller and use it for clay. You can make chocolate molds this way. You know, these are the ones that you just pour on and you scrape it, and then you pop it out afterwards. But if you guys like today's tutorials, please do like and subscribe. I got plenty more coming in the future, and I hope you all have yourselves a great day. Thank you all for tuning in.